The following video may contain sensitive topics. The views and opinions of the presenter to these are plainly his own. Furthermore, any and all views and opinions of the presenter do not in any way reflect the views, opinions, statements, and advocacies of his personal contacts, his family, his affiliations, and his profession. While the presenter makes a commitment that all content is original, he is obliged to cite references or acknowledge resources mentioned or used in the production of this video. This disclaimer is also written in the description below.
Okay mga kababayan, this is gonna be the second part of my two-part video for this week. And I would like to tell you all that this is a good time to monitor our society as a whole. And this is also a good time for all of us to think about why we should consider this lockdown, this quarantine, as a blessing in disguise and as an opportunity to reflect in the long term. Ngayon, normally, for my salty reactions and insight videos, may intro at this part. Pero, I'm forgoing that because I would like to upload this as fast as possible with minimal edits as possible. Kaya, I might have to read this on a script and then I'll just have to fill in as appropriate. This is also to consider myself parang ano ko na rin. This is also a lesson as well that we have to stick to the script, but if you have something important that is not in the script, you have to fill it up appropriately sa isang video. So, without further ado, simulan na natin to. Hi guys, Ian here, and let me share you my insight on the most recent plague that hit the world. Coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19, commonly called as the Wuhan coronavirus or the Chinese flu of 2020. And as I mentioned in my previous video, I don't really care if I get demonetized for this video because one, I'm not doing YouTube as a full-time job, and number two, I'm not yet eligible for monetization by the time of this recording. So either way, I'm not getting paid for this. Okay? But in order for me to help out my fellow YouTubers and fellow content creators out there, this very small YouTube channel would like to suggest that we would just call this as the plague of 2020 or simply the plague. Think about it for a moment. The world was forced to a grinding halt save for a very, very few vital institutions and industries that are still too many to mention based on the format of this video. And for this episode, we're just gonna very briefly talk about this plague, but we would also look at the response people made on the previous pandemics in the past. So kumbaga, hahapyawan natin yung ibang mga medyo historic din na mga pandemics. Now, for some context, this plague is not the first worldwide pandemic. It's a no-brainer. And unfortunately, it may not be the last. As long as there are people and there are a segment of the world's population who may have no idea about sanitary procedures, pandemics may still happen. And we need to remember that it is our negligence, not our ignorance, that caused these pandemics. There have been a number of plagues that ravaged all over the world in the previous centuries, from the Black Death to smallpox to cholera to measles. The world has tried to combat them, but it was of no effect as long as hygiene was not considered as a precautionary measure. Prior to the coronavirus, the most recent plague in collective memory was the 1918 pandemic, which pop culture names as the Spanish flu. While it is not certain why people attribute the pandemic to Spain, What is certain is that the plague showed up at the end of the First World War. The dismal situation at the trenches of the Western Front in specific made the condition worse, making a lot of the surviving troops from all sides of the Great War its first casualties. If not for the intrepid effort of nurses, many people might still have died. And up to this day, specifically now that we face this modern plague in the 21st century, we owe our thanks to each and every healthcare professional who cannot come home to their families and may possibly die due to this plague. We will make sure that we will stay in our homes and help our frontliners in every way we can, even if it means getting bored at home. And I'm game with that. Really. I'm game ako dun. I've been staying at home for the longest time. Somehow it's second nature to me. So, yeah. That's just my personal take on it. Although the damage has been done, it's just unfortunate that more than 100 years from the 19 pandemic, we have to repeat the words of Carl C.J. Johnson from GTA San Andreas. Oh shit, here we go again. Now, the Chinese people and its communist tyrants have a knack of eating just about anything they get their hands on, from dogs to snakes to bats, the latter of which, plus the dismal sanitation practices the Chinese of the mainland have, is considered the culprit of why Wuhan became ground zero of the pandemic. For Europeans, specifically Italians, it seems to be the Black Death all over again. And it makes them batshit crazy, literally, because, Italy is now the worst country to live in, or has the worst or the highest number of positive cases for this plague. So it's just unfortunate. And then China comes second. Patintero sila kung tutusin. Parang neck and neck minsan eh. I'm just saying. Now, that's why we cannot blame people from saying racial slurs against the Chinese. But to clarify, before I say anything else, I already shared my real talk in the previous video. Nasa taas na lang yun. Nalagay ko lang sa taas. Nasa description din sa baba. I would basically like to tell people here that I'm just against the people behind the pandemic, and the Chinese of Taiwan, the citizens of Hong Kong, and our own Chinese Filipino community who have perfectly assimilated with us are to be exempted from any tirades or racial slurs, as all of us only have to point our fingers to the People's Republic of China. Kumbaga, everyone would have to blame the Red Chinese for all of this. Even the Taiwanese, even the Hong Kongers, even the Singaporeans and the Chinese Filipinos and every Chinese person in diaspora are basically giving the mainland the finger salute. So that's just me. And before I go on, I already tackled that out, so paki-check na lang pagkatapos ng video na to. Now, in the days and weeks and months before the World Health Organization declared the plague as a pandemic, a lot of people are showing a graph similar to this one. So, if you might notice, this is a bit simplified, and pasensya na sa drawing or sa mga lines, but it's very, very, very important because the sharp curve here, the red curve here, means the fast spike of the cases of the plague in a short amount of time, while the gentle one, the blue here, meant basically the same amount of people who tested positive of the plague, or any pandemic for that matter, but are recorded at a longer period of time. There is also a line above or around the peak of the gentler curve, this black line here. And this signifies the maximum capacity of healthcare systems such as hospitals, health professionals, and logistics services, and even peace and order personnel and precautions, procedures, and preventive measures. If many will ignore this line, many will die in a short period of time, including those who work in the front lines of this plague. And as of this writing, there are already at least four healthcare professionals. Hindi ko alam kung may nadagdag pa, but as of the writing of the script, uh, there are at least four Filipino healthcare professionals who succumbed to the plague and became casualties themselves due to patient non-cooperation or even personal negligence in order to fulfill their duty to live and sadly die under the Hippocratic Oath. And for all of them, and for all those who are doing their duty, we would like to thank you all. And for those who died in the line of duty, may God be with you, and may you all rest in peace. Now, this, however, is a difficult dichotomy. People are supposed to stay at home for a duration as a precautionary quarantine. However, there are those non-vital industries and companies that don't support their employees through some work from home or stay in office schemes, thus having to risk their health and liberty just to work. This, my dear friends, mga kababayan, is a good exercise of discernment on gauging the balance between the common good and the stability of our economy. So, it's up to the individual to decide on what should you do. And minsan, mahirap magdesisyon. Decisions have to be made, but there are also consequences for that. So discernment is key. Now, no matter how we do it as a nation, it is our sworn duty to keep this country afloat. And thus, we must prevent the curve from soaring like this, the red line, and peaking to unbearable conditions. The reason why I'm sharing this curve or sharing this graphic, and a lot of people have already shared this graphic as well, is because we must all resolve to flat the curve. The most basic thing we can do is to stay home and stay indoors, period. We must also wash our hands regularly with soap and water and make sure that we bloody read and verify every single information that you receive. Double check or triple check with multiple sources if possible. Maintaining the correct information of measures while tolerating criticisms of such is our vital bit in this fight against the plague. We do not need the assistance of any country at this point. We have to fight this as if we're on our own. But we should never imitate the example of Italy. And just a quick side note, I think Google made a Google Doodle of this guy who pioneered the sanitary practice of washing your hands regularly. And I guess we owe it to that guy for curbing pandemics and also stopping a few other sicknesses or common sicknesses on the sides. And since we live in a democracy and everyone has the right to say something, it is okay to criticize. In fact, criticism is part and parcel of a democratic system. As long as of course you gauge how much you do so. Discern well what to say so that your criticism would not be interpreted as an insult to those in authority. Of course, That Manila paper stunt the legislators did the other day in sympathizing on our true frontliners is an exemption. Is an exception rather. It's that was fucking distasteful, no matter where you look at it. Okay, and we have to laugh sometimes. We have to laugh a bit sometimes. Tandaan natin mga kababayan, nakakatanda ng mukha at katawan ng stress. So, instead of just getting mad, getting angry, going on a rampage, like, fuck you all! I guess, you can also do the passive-aggressive approach of creating memes out of all those bad shit that happened in the past few days and weeks. So I'm giving you all the options, mga kababayan, okay? So that's up to you. Now, the most important thing that we have to do, whether you believe in a divine being or not, is to pray. Or at least spare a thought for those involved and those doing it tough while we do what we can as safely as possible. For centuries, the Benedictines lived by a simple code: ora et labora, pray and work, panalangin at paggawa. From this code, from Monte Cassino to the abbeys that follow the rule of Saint Benedict, secular society as we know it flourished, and the dual duty of doing our bit but also have the heart to consider being with those who are doing it tough in any aspect. Just realize the words the Christ told the Jews: render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. This week was declared as a national week of prayer. For liturgical Christians, the feast of the Annunciation of the Incarnation of Christ falls on this week. In fact, I am recording this on the 25th of March, the feast of the Annunciation. It is but fitting that we pray, whether we virtually attend a mass or service, marami dyan, pray the rosary or the divine office, or at least offer a few moments of silence remembering those who serve our country in this tumultuous time. Either way, sparing a thought, praying would definitely help. Never underestimate prayer, even though it's just a little help. Anything at this point, any help at this point counts. And mga kababayan, tama yun. Yes, you can still pray even if churches discouraged public worship and resorted to private services live streamed for their congregations. In your thoughts and prayers, remember those who stayed at work for you. Remember as well that by staying home, you help them in our collective effort to weather this storm. For some reason, the plague hit the world when Christians are within the season of Lent, a time of prayer, fasting, and penance. Circumstances have forced us to live like cloistered monks, and it is a good thing. Why? Aside from the fact that you are helping to flat the curve and you have the opportunity to offer a few moments of silence to and for the ones in the front lines of this fight, you are also called to remember and cherish the quality time you and your family will have. And just remember, by staying at home, we achieve the blue curve and not the red one. We have to flat the curve. And so I end my piece here. If ever you want to share your thoughts, kung may mga na-miss out ako, or may mga gusto lang kayong sabihin, please leave them in the comments below. With all that said, this is Ian reminding you that every enlightenment and every insight is worth it as we aim for knowledge and seek wisdom. and at all times be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Until then, wash your hands, stay at home, and see you next time. Bye, guys.